Hey guys, welcome back to Black Clover Mobile. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at a tier list for the game, giving my thoughts on it. And before we get into that, as we always do with New Game Hype, we're going to do a giveaway in this video. $100 giveaway, just be subscribed, leave a comment on this video, and we'll do the draw about a week away in a community post. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Just be subscribed, leave a comment, you'll go into the draw, and then just keep an eye out for community posts in the future. But tier list, always a controversial thing, but I feel like there is definitely a place for it in this game. I'll talk about my thoughts around different tier lists and stuff like that, so let's get into it. Okay, so we're over here on Pridewin taking a look at their tier lists. They've got PVE, PvP for global, then they've got KR, JP, PVE, and PvP. If you want to take a look at future units, you can just mouse over, you can click on them, you can go read their abilities, find out why they're there and stuff like that. But for this one, we're going to mainly focus on global PvP. I'll talk about PvE as well. Also, before we get into it, I want to give three massive shout outs. One to Antilla from Pridewin, always does a great job getting these things together on the site, just runs it really well. But then two massive shout outs to Giku and also Antho. Apologies if I say your names brutally, boys, but I just suck at names. But these two guys, other content creators, massive shout out to them. We've had some really good banter in a Discord channel ever since the Canadian launched. So massive shout out to those boys. Go show them some love. I'll leave channels in the description. But I want to talk about these tier lists. So first of all, PvE tier list. This, for new players, I wouldn't focus in on a PvE tier list. I feel like new players, what your focus is build a good first team. If I don't already have a video out on that, because I'm recording all these things at the same time, I will very shortly have a video out on like best like beginner team to focus on getting your gear grind happening. But I feel like you want to focus on just your beginner team. Like for instance, as a new player, Charmy is like one of the most important units to get yourself started in gear farming because she's a blue healer and not the dog, dude, that was wrong. But she's a blue / technique healer, and you know, you kind of need her until you get geared. You don't need her once you're geared and built up, but you know, she's pretty necessary early on. And if you don't have someone like Mars, then you're probably going to need someone like Sol. So, you know, this is more once you've got an advanced account, this is sort of the overall performance of these characters in general PvE modes as a whole. So I think it's a good representation, but not the first thing you should look to for as a new player. I think the most important thing for new players looking at the game is building your teams right. But then I think PvP is a more relevant tier list as we look to it, because you will see the meta shifts based on new characters, what elements are powerful, especially when we look to KR and JP. PvP, depending on what's hot, you have anti-meta picks and stuff like that, which is really cool. But in global, let's talk about global. And like I said, that is why I'm going to focus in more on the PvP. But when I talk about these characters, I will talk about them from a PvP and PvE perspective, depending on if I feel it's relevant to mention them in PvE as well. So first of all, we've got Asta. And just keep in mind, when we look at characters, there are different versions. As you can see, we've got Yami and we got Yami. This is the season 1 Yami, the blue one. This is the red Yami, which we have the banner for. And then on top of that, also we do have Licked Raya. We also have where is it? We also have Veto in here as well, because those are going to be the first, what we expect to be the first units coming, and Fauna as well. So those will be coming, but let's go through it. So Asta, great for PvP because he has an ultimate which is going to buff his damage, then attack, and if the enemy is above 80% when he uses it, he gains another turn. Then he can use his skill, which is another single target attack that buffs his attack before he does it. So it's really crazy. Did I say that right? His ultimate buffs damage, and then his skill buffs attack before he does the action. So he can deal massive damage straight off the bat. Finral and Valtos. I always say Valtros. I don't know why. I'm an idiot. But these two are both high base speed and gauge boosters, which makes them good for offense in boosting your team. Now, the thing is, Valtos is more reliable for offensive cleaving, because if we go here and we look at his ability, applies a 20% increased stamina. Now, increased stamina is your like turn gauge to all allies. Whereas if we go over to Finral, the way to get his boost is you also have to have his skill page, which is an extra requirement. But once you have his skill page, it's still only a 60% chance to grant a 15% increased mobility. So for that reason, Veltos is more reliable for offense, but I like Finral more for defense personally and for PvE usage because the rest of Finral's kit is just way better. He's just got so much in his kit. He's got the attack up, he's got the damage. He's just got a really nice with the cleanse, the speed buff, like he's got a lot to his kit, more than just the boost that he gives. But I personally, for offense, like I said, I like Veltos more, but for defense and for just general content, I like Finral more. That's just my basic roundup of those two SR units. Then we have Mimosa. Mimosa, great defensive capabilities. You've got the Revive as well. She's just a great all-round supportive unit. And then we have Rades as well, who has immunity. He has shields. He has like mitigation. Just a really strong unit as well. Now, these guys are also really decent because the meta is heavily blue at the start, and having green units is going to be solid. So they do sort of counter what you'll see, which is a lot of Lotus mixed with Mars and Vengeance. Like that'll be very, very strong in the early stages. So being green also helps them along the way with that. As we move on, we got Lotus. Lotus is amazing. Lotus is like the most, if I had to say there was a must-have, nothing is must-have obviously, but my highest recommended must-have unit would be Lotus. He's got damage amplification, he's got slows, he's got reduction for enemies, just an all-round beastie unit, and he can also extend debuffs with his skill, only single target, but still pretty reasonable. Mars is amazing, especially for defense, because he has the passive. If we jump into him, we'll take a look at his passive down here. Grants all allies debuff immunity for 1 turn at the start of battle. So if you're running on defense, normally offensive enemies, you know, they're going to be trying to do their offensive battles quick. They're going to try and, you know, speed cleave you. If they don't have a strip, then you're pretty much GG's, because they're not going to land their debuffs and you're going to be good. So he's a really annoying one to play around when he's on defense, so it makes him really powerful, but he's also great in PvE. Best blue tank for PvE early on as well. So he's just an all-round amazing unit. Then we have Vengeance. Vengeance has a really wicked kit, especially for PvP. He's good for PvE later on when you can replace a healer with him and you don't need the heals, but early on you're not going to really use him for PvE as much. But as you can see, when we look at his kit, his skill is going to grant an ally increased attack, increased speed, and then we've also got the mobility when their mobility is equal. This one's a bit of a catch, but the big thing is we get speed and attack. But then we have this one as well, which grants all allies fortify for 2 turns, which is going to reduce damage taken, but then grants counterattack to the ally with the highest attack for 1 turn. This is huge with some units. It actually works really well with Red Yami, even though I don't recommend Red Yami too highly, because he's got the AoE and it's pretty, like, you can really start melting some teams. But basically with anything that has a decent basic attack as an attacker, like, this is a great boost to them. Then we also have on his basic attack, we've got a 40% chance to transform, which is basically just a hard CC for an enemy, which is fantastic. If you get that, that is super solid. So that is what we're looking at with Vengeance, all-round strong unit. Charlotte's honestly amazing. She's just like that all-rounder. We've got defense break and mark, and then we've also got down here, we've got attack break as well, with bleed. Now, she pairs really well with the Red Yami too, but the thing about mark, grants an additional turn if an enemy with mark is defeated. She allows you to snowball super hard. I really do love this. We all get her for free, which is fantastic. She's the guaranteed SSR from your first 10 pool, and she is just an all-round great unit. The thing that drops her down in PvP is that blue is so strong and she is red, and that's probably her main downfall. Then we have Yami. Yami's another great unit. Once again, just falling out to the fact that blue is so strong at the start, but we've got this basic attack, like I said, at the start, deals damage to all enemies and applies bleed, which isn't too bad. This one does get boosted, but we're not going to look at that. Actually, wait, we get his thing for free, don't we? But yeah, we can stun a bleeding enemy, which is really, really solid. And like I said, Charlotte can apply bleeds. They have that good synergy, but he also applies bleeds with his basic attack. You can also, you know, if you use him with Vengeance, Vengeance can put the revenge on him. He gets attacked. He then revenges with the AoE bleed. Then he can skill with this into the stun. Really, really solid all round. But then we also have the ultimate, which is another heavy nuke. So I think Yami all round, pretty great unit. But once again, he does fall off. He's not the greatest thing to go for straight away. But still really solid when we do get him at the launch. Licton Raya, I'm not going to go too, and Fana, I'm not going to go in depth too much into them because they are not out yet. So I don't want you guys to get hung up on these units, and I don't want to go too deep into that. Yami, which is the season 1 Yami that we have, he's really good. He's good for PvE early days, best blue damage dealer. But I've mentioned this before that you don't need a great damage dealer in your initial farming team. You just really need a good tank, you need a healer, and you need a support. And ideally you have like Lotus, Mars, and Charmy, and then you're pretty much set to go. And then your damage can be whatever, but he also is pretty decent in PvP. I definitely prefer something like Asta though. Even though Asta does lose out to the blue meta, I still think he is very powerful. And I also even like the red Yami personally on my personal playstyle in PvP at the start. But once again, that is me personally. I am a bit different. But yeah, Yami still all around great unit, the blue Yami. As we move on past that, we get into some more fringe units. These are just sort of your remaining SSR units that you have that have a place but don't quite excel as much as the rest of these units. Now you can experiment with them and you can get use out of them. Some units I want to mention for free to play. Yuno's actually not too bad. The SR Yuno we get ain't too bad if you have like no other options. He is pretty decent. He was kind of relevant for a little bit in Canada launch, but the problem is people just pull better units and then don't need him. So it's only one of those cases if you've got absolutely nothing else, you can get some use. Even with this Asta, I have seen him do some things as well, which isn't too bad. But at the end of the day, these are more fringe units that you're building because you have nothing else and you want to build them. Same like Fuegoleon is actually pretty decent. I do like Fuegoleon as a counter to some of these blue teams, but I wouldn't go heavy into him at the start. Like I said, when we look at the global launch of the game, you want to be ideally building units for PvP and PvE. Your first progression wants to be your PvE farming gear. You want to get to farm LR gear first, and some of these units that are good in both of those types of things are going to be your #1 go-to point, and then past that you can start looking at some specific PvP units. But I think looking at these top 2 tiers, there's a lot of units in there for people to have a look at and have a play with. We've got the 3 seasonal units, which people are probably going to be summoning on that banner. We have the Yami banner, which I don't recommend, but if people are summoning on it, you got Charlotte, who everyone gets a copy of. We've got Veltos and we've got Finral, who are both just all-round great units that are SRs, which a lot of people have access to. And then maybe you pull 1 or 2 of the other ones. Besides that, you're looking at building things like Charmy, Soul if you don't have Mars, to do your PvE progression and stuff like that. But in general, I think this is a pretty solid tier list. I'm curious to see where the global meta goes compared to like something like the Canada meta, to see if people have evolved their takes on that. I'm definitely looking forward to it, but I definitely think early meta is going to involve Lotus and Mars heavily, plus possibly William. We'll have to wait and see, but I feel like Lotus, Mars are like the 2 staples you will see on defense, and then we'll have to see past that. And I'm curious to see if people go all in on the like the cleave type teams, or whether offense becomes a slow play offense where you're using that Mars Lotus type combo and then trying to pick counter picks to the enemy team. We'll have to wait and see, but I do like PvP in this game. It is quite nice. Sometimes the only criticism I have of it is that it is a bit too slow and it can take too long to do battles. So that is my one thing. So even though cleave is sometimes not as reliable, I still like doing it so I don't spend forever playing it. So depends on the kind of situation you're in, how you're feeling about it. But that is the look at the tier list. Once again, I'll leave this linked in the description. You can jump in here, you can take a look, you can have a look at KRJP metas and see what's coming, see what units you might want to save for. But we still don't know the banner order for global, whether they are going to follow the same order that the others went, or whether we're going to get scattered, whether we're going to skip units. I have no idea, so we'll have to wait and see. But anyway, guys, that is going to be it for this one. Thanks for watching. Hope you have an awesome day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Cheers.